It started like any other Tuesday. Karoline Leavitt reached for her phone, still in bed, half awake. But what she saw on the screen made her sit straight up. CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC were all blasting the same headline. Jasminecrockett files $80 million lawsuit against Whitehouse press secretary Karoline Leavitt. Her heart started pounding. Her hands trembled. She blinked again, hoping she had read it wrong. She hadn't. This wasn't a bad article. This wasn't a rumor. It was real and it was everywhere. Within minutes, the group chats lit up. Reporters started calling, social media exploded. Karoline wasn't just in trouble. She was in the kind of trouble that ends careers. The lawsuit wasn't some small claim or personal disagreement. It was a massive, public, legal punch to the face, straight at the youngest press secretary in American history. Karoline had built a reputation as a firecracker, sharp, fearless, and always ready for a fight. Just weeks earlier, she'd gone viral for tearing into a Hollywood actor during a live interview. That moment made her a hero on the right. She became the face of a new kind of conservatism, young, confident, and unapologetic. Her followers loved how she didn't back down, even when it meant crossing the line. They said she was the future, but that future was suddenly in flames. On the other side of this story stood Congresswoman Jasminecrockett. Unlike Karoline, Jasmine didn't chase cameras or pick fights online. She was a 43-year-old former civil rights lawyer from Texas. She didn't scream on live TV. She didn't throw insults. She filed lawsuits and she won them. Quiet, serious, and incredibly smart, Jasmine had spent years in courtrooms holding powerful people accountable. She wasn't flashy, but she was effective. While Karoline gained fans by going viral, Jasmine gained respect by doing the work. And now, she was coming for Karoline with one of the biggest defamation lawsuits Washington had seen in years. It all started from a single press conference, where Karoline said something she shouldn't have. The details weren't all out yet, but it was already clear this wasn't going away. Legal analysts were calling the lawsuit career-ending. Twitter was on fire. People were picking sides. And through it all, Karoline was watching everything she built begin to collapse. What happened over the next 72 hours would tear Karoline's world apart. It wasn't just about one press briefing. It wasn't just about harsh words. This was a story about what happens when power is used carelessly. When someone believes they're untouchable until they're not. This wasn't politics as usual. This was personal. This was legal. And for Karoline Leavitt, this was the beginning of the end. It was supposed to be a normal Tuesday briefing. Karoline Leavitt stood behind the podium, looking sharp and confident as always. She had just wrapped up a few wins and was riding high after weeks of favorable coverage. Reporters were used to her quick answers and strong opinions. But that day, one question changed everything. Sarah Chen, a journalist from the Washington Post, asked about Congresswoman Jasminecrockett's proposed voting rights legislation. It should have been an easy one. Karoline could have given a safe answer. But instead, she snapped. With a smirk and a tone full of sarcasm, Karoline leaned into the mic. Congresswoman Crockett claims to care about voting rights. She began, but she's really just another angry activist who got elected by playing the victim card. Her so-called civil rights work is just ambulance chasing for cash. The room went silent. Some reporters blinked in disbelief. Others looked at each other. Karoline didn't stop. She kept going. She called Crockett divisive, accused her of building a career on fake outrage, and even took shots at her appearance. All of it live, broadcasted on national TV, replayed online within seconds. The fallout started immediately. Social media caught fire. Within minutes, #LeavittOut and #Crockett deserves respect were trending worldwide. Influencers, journalists, and everyday users were sharing clips of the press conference, adding their own shocked reactions. Some called it disgusting. Others called it racist. A few tried to defend her, but even her usual supporters were struggling to explain what they'd just watched. Jasminecrockett didn't reply on Twitter. She didn't go on a rant. Instead, she got to work. Behind the scenes, her team began pulling together every clip, every quote, and every insult Karoline had ever thrown her way. In less than 48 hours, they had a file big enough to shake Washington. Then came the bombshell. Jasminecrockett held a press conference outside the Capitol. Standing beside her legal team, she calmly announced an $80 million defamation and civil rights lawsuit against Karoline Leavitt. The crowd of reporters leaned in. Crockett didn't yell. She didn't throw shade. She held up a stack of documents and spoke with precision. We've identified 47 instances where Ms. Leavitt publicly attacked my character, my career, and my right to serve the people of Texas, she said. This is not about political disagreement. This is about targeted harassment and abuse of power. The lawsuit hit like a truck. News outlets ran with it non-stop. Legal experts weighed in, and Karoline, instead of responding with care, she made her first big mistake. At the next press briefing, she laughed. This is a publicity stunt, she said, brushing it off with a half smile. I'm not worried about attention-seeking politicians who file fake lawsuits. That single line made everything worse. Crockett's team immediately updated their legal filing to include the new comments. More evidence. More damages. Lawyers on cable news were shaking their heads. One said, she's basically handing Crockett money every time she speaks. Then, cracks began forming in Karoline's support system. Senator Ted Cruz, once one of her loudest fans, issued a brief, cold statement. All public officials should speak with professionalism and care. Charlie Kirk, who had promoted her rise, posted a vague tweet about avoiding unnecessary distractions. Megyn Kelly dedicated part of her podcast to the importance of knowing when to shut up without naming Karoline. But everyone knew who she meant. Even Fox News was acting different. Usually quick to defend their media darlings, the hosts looked uncomfortable. One segment avoided playing the full clip of the press conference entirely. Another invited a legal analyst who gently suggested that Karoline might need some guidance. Suddenly, the story wasn't about a bold press secretary anymore. It was about a rising star who'd flown too close to the sun. The press started comparing her to past political figures who'd crashed hard. They weren't calling her fearless. Anymore, they were calling her reckless. And on the other side, Crockett's image was growing stronger. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't attacking. She was calm, prepared, and strategic. While Karoline doubled down on arrogance, Crockett doubled down on facts. People noticed. The story shifted. It wasn't Karoline versus Jasmine. It was ego versus discipline, noise versus strategy. One woman was talking her way into a deeper hole. The other was preparing to bury her in court. What started as one bad moment had grown into a full-on disaster. For Karoline Leavitt, the legal trouble wasn't the only problem. The political world was turning cold. Her supporters were going silent. Her enemies were organizing. And the public, they were watching closely and losing patience. A week after the lawsuit went public, everything changed. Jasminecrockett's legal team quietly filed a discovery motion in federal court. A common step in lawsuits, but this one carried more than just technical paperwork. Tucked inside the thick legal filing, on page 23, was something explosive. An email, written by Karoline Leavitt herself, sent months earlier to a well-known conservative blogger. The subject line was normal, but the body of the email was anything but. It read, "We need to destroy Crockett's credibility. I don't care what it takes, make stuff up if you have to." One line, 17 words, and with that, the case went from serious to catastrophic. The email hit the internet like lightning. Screenshots began circulating on Twitter within minutes. News anchors interrupted regular coverage to read the quote out loud, and the reactions, immediate and brutal. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, "This is what corruption looks like. A government official using her power to spread lies. Dangerous and disgusting." The tweet had 1 million likes in less than 2 hours. Conservative circles weren't cheering either. Some influencers who had once backed Karoline began quietly deleting their old posts about her. Others posted half-hearted responses like, "If this is true, it's indefensible." The silence said more than the words. Karoline tried to get ahead of it, but her response made things worse. She claimed the email was taken out of context and meant to be about general opposition research. But nobody bought it. The words "make stuff up if you have to" were too clear, too direct, too damaging. Even her supporters were struggling to explain it. Journalists asked tough questions. Legal experts on cable news said the line alone could push the court to rule in Crockett's favor without even needing a trial. Then came Crockett's second press conference. This time, she wasn't just filing paperwork. She was standing in front of cameras, holding the actual email in her hands. Her tone was steady, serious. "This isn't a case of political disagreement," she said, flipping through pages. "This is abuse of power. It's corruption. And it's illegal." She read the email out loud, slowly, repeating the most damaging sentence again. "Make stuff up if you have to." The reporters in the crowd were silent. Some looked uncomfortable. Others just stared. It didn't feel like a normal press event. It felt like a courtroom. And Crockett was winning. Inside the White House, the mood shifted fast. Staff was seen moving boxes. Security meetings were suddenly more frequent. Nobody was defending Karoline anymore. The press office stopped posting her briefings on social media. She was overheard telling someone she would crush Crockett in court, like Rowe, referring to the celebrity she once embarrassed on national TV. But this wasn't a cable news debate. This was federal court. And the stakes were way higher. One legal analyst said bluntly on CNN, "She just added millions in damages with that attitude." Support continued to crumble. Fox News, which had once treated Karoline like a rising star, suddenly stopped booking her. Breitbart ran a headline that didn't even try to spin the story. Leavitt's email scandal grows. What was she thinking? Ben Shapiro, who had praised her confidence before, tweeted something short and cold. Words matter. Even inside the White House, unnamed officials began leaking quotes to reporters. One source said, "She doesn't get it. She still thinks this is a TV show. But this isn't a show. This is real." Despite all the warnings, Karoline stepped back in front of the cameras one last time. She looked tired, but determined. Her voice was shaky, but she tried to stay strong. "The American people can decide what I meant," she said, when asked directly about the email. The room was silent. No follow-up applause. No nods from reporters. Just uncomfortable stillness. One conservative journalist later described the moment like this: "It was like watching someone dig their own grave on live television." By that evening, the news broke. Karoline Leavitt had resigned. The resignation letter was formal and vague. She didn't admit fault. She didn't say sorry. She simply said she was stepping down so the White House could focus on more important things. But everyone knew the truth. The email destroyed her credibility. The press conference sealed her fate. And her final appearance behind the podium confirmed what many had already suspected: she was finished. The climb had been fast, but the fall was even faster. One careless sentence. One arrogant email. One press secretary who thought she could say anything and get away with it. Now, she was out of a job, at the center of a lawsuit, and facing a legal and political disaster that she had created with her own hands. After her resignation, Karoline Leavitt disappeared from the spotlight almost overnight. The same press that once praised her flooded outside her family's home in New Hampshire. Camera crews waited at the edge of her driveway, hoping for a glimpse. Her parents had to hire private security after a few reporters got too close. Inside the house, things were tense. Her younger sister stopped going to school after students started mocking her with viral TikToks, showing Karoline's final press briefing. And Karoline herself. Friends who visited said she looked like a ghost, tired, quiet, barely eating. The confidence that once defined her was gone. The financial hit came quickly. Her legal bills passed $2 million within a few months. Her team filed motion after motion trying to dismiss the case, but the judge wasn't moved. Every attempt was denied. One ruling from the court even called her actions reckless and malicious. With no income, no White House protection, and no private sector job offers, Karoline had no choice but to put her Washington apartment up for sale. The girl who once stood at the center of American politics was now back in her childhood bedroom, facing a lawsuit that could ruin her forever. While Karoline was trying to disappear, Jasminecrockett was stepping into the spotlight. She didn't throw victory parties or do flashy interviews. Instead, she showed up at legal panels, on political talk shows, at civil rights events. Publishers offered her book deals. Networks asked her to comment on legal issues. A quiet congresswoman just months earlier was now seen as a sharp legal mind with the courage to stand her ground. One commentator summed it up perfectly. She didn't yell, she sued. The lawsuit moved forward fast. Experts said it wasn't a matter of if Karoline would lose, but how much she'd be forced to pay. The court filings pointed to tens of millions in possible damages. Bankruptcy attorneys said she might have to file just to survive. The case was no longer just personal, it was political history. Law professors called it one of the most important defamation cases involving a White House official in recent years. It became required reading in political science and communications classes. In PR, crisis training sessions across the country, trainers repeated one simple line, again and again: never email something you wouldn't want to read in court. The story stuck because it wasn't just about politics. It was about two very different ways of using power. Karoline thought winning meant being loud, going viral, and crushing your enemies on camera. Jasmine showed that real power doesn't need shouting, it just needs evidence. Karoline tried to win the moment. Jasmine played the long game and won the war. In the end, Karoline Leavitt wasn't destroyed by Jasminecrockett. She was destroyed by her own decisions, by her pride, by the belief that she could say anything and never face the fallout. The lawsuit didn't end her career. It just exposed what was already broken. She thought she was untouchable. She learned to light that no one is,